Daniel had always believed the mountain was honest. Its wind spoke plainly, its trails never lied, and its silence held a kind of dignity that comforted him during every solo hike he ever took. But as he took his first step onto the ridge that evening, he felt the silence bend, almost as if the mountain was holding its breath. He dismissed the unease, tightening the straps of his pack, unaware that this would be the last time anyone saw him walking of his own will. The sun hung low, bleeding orange across the jagged horizon, and Daniel paused to listen to the famous echo the trail was known for. He shouted his name into the vast emptiness, expecting the usual cheerful bounce of sound. But the echo that returned was delayed, faint, and wrong. It didn't match his tone. It sounded heavier, older, almost irritated that he had called. He froze mid-step. The chill had nothing to do with the cold wind scraping through the pines. He tried again, louder this time, voice trembling with a laugh he didn't feel. The echo answered once more, but instead of repeating his name, it whispered it, as if lips pressed directly against his ear. Daniel spun around so fast his boots slipped on the gravel, but the ridge behind him was empty, just a stretch of dying light and whispering trees. He shook his head, trying to rationalize it. Maybe the angle of the cliffs distorted sound. Maybe exhaustion played tricks. He had hiked harder trails alone. He had camped in storms where lightning danced close enough to burn. Yet none of it had ever felt like this, like the mountain wasn't welcoming him, but watching him. A patch of fog rolled across the path ahead, too thick and too sudden for the dry season. Daniel hesitated, but the alternative was turning back, and pride had a way of chaining him forward. He walked into it, the world dimming, the temperature dropping so sharply he could see his breath. The fog muffled everything, his footsteps, the rustling branches, even the familiar hum of wind between the rocks. Then, somewhere deep within the white veil, something answered the sound of his breathing. A second inhalation, soft and steady, perfectly matching the pace of his own. He stopped. The breathing stopped. He took one step forward. The unseen thing took one step too. Panic cracked through him like ice breaking under weight. He forced himself to leave the fog, stumbling out onto clearer ground, heart battering his ribs. He didn't dare look back into the whiteness spreading behind him like a living thing. He kept moving, faster now, chasing the safety of the campsite he planned to reach before dark. But when the fog thinned enough for him to see the trail ahead, Daniel realized he was no longer alone in the wilderness. A single word drifted toward him from behind, his name, spoken in a voice that was unmistakably his, but laced with a hunger he didn't understand. He didn't run. He couldn't. The mountain had already decided he would not leave it unchanged. Maya had been part of search and rescue long enough to recognize when a campsite felt wrong, and Daniel's tent was wrong in every possible way. It stood perfectly upright, clean, undisturbed, as if someone had just stepped out for a moment and would return any second. But the stillness around it was too complete. No birds, no insects, not even the faint murmur of wind dared cross its boundary. It felt like the mountain was holding its breath again, waiting for someone to touch the tent and break whatever spell it was under. She unzipped the flap slowly, expecting the sour smell of decay or the scattered chaos of an animal attack. Instead, she found Daniel's belongings neatly arranged. His food, his water, his spare clothes. Nothing stolen, nothing disturbed. It was the phone on the corner of his sleeping bag that made her stomach twist. Battery full, flashlight app still open, as if he'd pointed it at something in the dark and dropped it mid-breath. Next to it lay a piece of paper. Torn edges, pencil pressure so deep it nearly broke the page. Only 4 words were written, but they dragged cold fingers down Maya's spine. It spoke my name first. She read them twice, then a third time, her pulse tightening with each repetition. Daniel wasn't the type to leave notes. And certainly not notes like this. She stepped back outside, forcing herself to breathe, forcing her brain into the logical grid she always used on missions. But logic didn't explain why her boots suddenly felt heavier, why the air seemed thicker, or why every direction she turned felt wrong, like the world was tilting ever so slightly, nudging her towards something she could not see. As she checked for tracks, she noticed something odd. The dirt around the tent was untouched, no footprints leading away. But to the left of camp, where the fog must have rolled hours before they arrived, the soil bore a single long drag mark, as if someone had been pulled sideways, heels scraping the earth. It went on for meters before disappearing behind a cluster of boulders. Maya followed the mark, her breath unsteady, her flashlight trembling in her hand though she tried to keep it steady. Each step felt like she was walking deeper into a place the mountain didn't want to reveal. The faintest sound echoed between the rocks, too faint to identify, but enough to make every hair on her arms rise. It wasn't wind, it wasn't an animal, it was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like breathing. She stopped near the boulders and listened. The breathing paused. She took one careful step closer. The breathing returned, but this time, it matched her own inhalations perfectly, slow when she breathed slow, rapid when her heart began to race. Something behind the stones was copying her, waiting for her. The radio on her shoulder crackled suddenly, making her flinch. Static at first, then a voice, Daniel's voice, quiet and strained, whispering through layers of distortion. "Don't follow it, it isn't me." Her blood turned to ice. She spun toward the tent, toward the trail, toward any direction that wasn't this one. But before she could move, a second voice rose from behind the rocks, her own, mimicked flawlessly, calling her by name with a tone so gentle it sounded like a lie. Maya forced herself to step back, but the stones seemed to close in around her, their jagged shadows clawing at the edges of her vision. She kept her flashlight aimed at the narrow gap between the boulders even as her hands trembled uncontrollably. Something moved inside the darkness, slow, deliberate, like a hand brushing softly along the stone. Then she heard it again, her own voice whispering her name with an unsettling tenderness, as though whatever was inside the crevice knew her intimately. She raised the volume on her radio, desperately calling for her team, her voice cracking with each word. Only static answered, a dense silence pressed down afterward, one so thick she felt she could choke on it. Then, faintly beneath the static, Daniel's voice returned, quieter now, shaped by pain rather than fear. "Don't let it learn you." The message cut abruptly, like someone had sliced the signal in half. Maya swallowed hard and shone her flashlight deeper into the crevice. At first, she saw only rough stone. Then, as the beam adjusted, she spotted something wedged between the rocks, Daniel's hiking pole. It wasn't broken, just placed there, almost presented. A warning, a lure, or both. She stepped closer, boots crunching softly on gravel, heart hammering. The air felt colder the nearer she got, frigid enough to sting her skin. The walls seemed carved with deep, frantic scratches, some small, as if made by fingernails, others long, powerful, as if gouged by something not human. The marks spiraled inward, leading deeper into a darkness untouched by her light. As she leaned in slightly, the echoes started. First a soft murmur, then more, overlapping, hundreds of faint voices repeating her breaths, her shifts, her heartbeat. They were copying her in perfect rhythm, like a chorus rehearsing with her as their conductor. Her instinct screamed to retreat, but a flicker of movement deeper inside caught her attention. Something pale, like skin, slipped out of view just as her light touched it. She jerked back with a gasp, stumbling on loose stones. But the voices didn't stop. They grew louder, layering on top of each other until she couldn't tell which ones were hers and which ones belonged to something else entirely. Maya backed away, step by trembling step, her boots crunching loud against the dead quiet. Then, from the shadows, a new sound emerged, soft footsteps, but uneven, dragging, like someone walking with a broken gait. They drew near the entrance of the crevice and stopped just before the light reached them. She held her breath, terrified the thing would mimic it again. But instead, it spoke, and the voice that came out wasn't hers or Daniel's. It was a third voice, one too deep, too layered, as though built from multiple mouths. "You came looking." The voice rolled through her bones, more vibration than sound. Maya turned and ran, not because she thought she could escape, but because every instinct inside her screamed that to stay even 1 second longer was to let the mountain remake her. As she stumbled back toward Daniel's tent, the voices behind her unified into one single echo, repeating her desperate breaths back at her, following her, learning her, calling her by a name she no longer wanted to hear. Maya didn't stop running until the tent came into view, a lone shape in the deadened clearing. She collapsed beside it, gasping, gripping the fabric as though it were the only thing tethering her to reality. The forest had gone impossibly still again, the kind of silence that made her ears ring. She listened for the footsteps, for the breathing, for the layered voice that had crawled out of the crevice, but nothing followed. The quiet was worse. It felt intentional, as if the mountain was waiting for her to make the next move. She fumbled for the radio, hands slick with sweat, and tried again to reach her team. Static. She shook it. Static. Then, for a heartbeat, a soft click, like someone pressing the button on the other end. She held her breath, leaning close, hoping for a familiar voice. Instead, a faint recording played back to her. Her own voice shouting from minutes earlier, distorted and hollow, as though it had been swallowed by stone and spit back out. Her stomach lurched. That meant it wasn't just mimicking live sounds. It was collecting them. She forced herself to stand. The drag marks leading toward the boulders were still etched into the earth, but something new caught her eye. Another trail, lighter, newer, weaving around the tent in a wide circle. Footsteps. Bare ones. Smaller than hers, but with toes splayed in an unnatural arc, as if whoever, or whatever, made them hadn't walked like a human in a very long time. They circled the tent once, twice, then stopped directly behind where she stood. Maya turned so fast her neck cracked, flashlight sweeping across empty air. No figure, no breathing, just footprints ending in nothing. She fought down the urge to scream and backed toward Daniel's pack. She needed clues, anything tangible to anchor herself. Rifling through it, she found his notebook, the pages wrinkled by moisture or fear. Most entries were normal, weather notes, trail sketches, plans. But the last 2 pages were frantic, written in slanted strokes that carved into the paper. It heard me before I heard it. It learned my voice in minutes. It wants to sound human again. As she read, a sound drifted from the treeline. Soft, fragile, a single syllable spoken like a question. Her name, not mimicked this time, hesitant, as if the thing was practicing. Learning her cadence, perfecting her voice. Maya snapped the notebook shut, every instinct spiraling into raw panic. She backed toward the tent, shielding her light, trying to calculate distance, escape routes, anything. Then another sound rose behind her, so close it felt like a breath on the back of her neck. A quiet, trembling whisper, her exact tone, her exact voice, speaking with eerie uncertainty, like a child forming its first word. Maya. She didn't turn, couldn't. Every muscle in her body locked with primal terror as the voice tried again, smoother this time, closer to perfect. The creature wasn't chasing her. It was learning her, and once it learned her completely, She understood with sickening clarity. It would step out of the trees wearing her voice like a skin. Maya forced herself to move, each step a battle against the paralyzing cold building in her spine. She retreated toward the rope line the team had set earlier, the thin nylon barely visible in the darkness. It was supposed to guide them back to the main trail if visibility dropped, but now it felt like a lifeline out of something that did not belong in the world she understood. Her flashlight flickered as she backed away, and in that brief stutter of darkness, she heard it again, her voice, just behind her, whispering her own breath back into her ear. She clamped a hand over her mouth, terrified that any sound she made would be copied, perfected. The forest pressed in, claustrophobic, each shadow stretching like a snare. She grasped the rope with shaking fingers and began moving along it. Every footstep she took was matched by another pair behind her. Soft, bare, whisper light, as though something taller than her was trying to walk delicately, trying to imitate her rhythm but getting it just slightly wrong. Her heartbeat thundered. She told herself not to look back. But the temptation clawed at her mind. What if Daniel was actually there? What if his voice hadn't been entirely taken? What if? No. She squeezed her eyes shut and kept moving. She had learned enough tonight to know that the mountain fed on hesitation. A cold wind slashed through the clearing, carrying with it a sound like laughter, thin, stretched, broken into pieces as if the creature didn't yet understand how to shape the emotion. Maya stumbled, gripping the rope tighter. When she opened her eyes, she saw movement ahead. Not the creature, not Daniel, but something worse, a thin, pale arm wrapped lightly around the rope farther down the line. Long fingers curled over it, almost gently, as if guiding her forward. Her breath hitched. The arm slowly slid off the rope and withdrew into darkness, leaving the nylon swaying softly. It had been waiting for her, anticipating her path, learning not just her voice, but her habits, her decisions, her instincts. The realization burrowed into her chest. She wasn't just being followed. She was being studied. She backed away from the rope, deciding to cut across the clearing instead. But the moment she did, the trees on her left erupted with voices, hundreds of them, all speaking at once in a dissonant choir. Some were Daniel's, some were hers, some were mismatched fragments of hikers she had never met. The forest shook with stolen breaths, stolen fear, stolen identities. Maya clasped her hands over her ears, but the voices seeped through her palms like cold water. They weren't trying to scare her anymore. They were calling to her, begging her, promising her things she couldn't understand. And beneath all of them, one voice rose, louder and fuller, now almost perfect. Her own voice, speaking with a steadiness she didn't possess. Come back. She spun toward the tree line, and froze. A silhouette stood half hidden among the pines, tall, wrong, its limbs slightly too long. The head tilted in a jerky, unfamiliar angle, as if the creature was trying to mimic a human gesture but had only seen it done once. Its chest rose and fell with her stolen breathing. And when it spoke again, the voice was flawless, indistinguishable from her own. I can be you. Maya ran, not toward the rope, not toward the trail, but blindly into the darkness, because she understood something now with a terror so absolute it nearly brought her to her knees. The creature didn't chase people to kill them. It chased people to replace them. And now it had a new target. Her. Branches whipped at Maya's face as she tore through the forest, lungs burning, vision shaking with each panicked stride. The night had grown unnaturally thick, like the darkness itself was pushing back, trying to slow her, trying to swallow her. Every time she blinked, she saw flashes of the creature's silhouette burned into the backs of her eyelids. Every time she inhaled, she felt the shape of her own stolen breath echoing behind her, as if the monster were breathing through her lungs. She didn't know where she was going anymore. She only knew she had to outrun her own voice. Her scream tore loose before she could stop it as she stumbled down a steep slope, knees hitting the earth hard enough to bruise. The sound ricocheted between the trees, and then came back to her, but slower, stretched, dipping into a guttural echo. The creature wasn't repeating her scream. It was testing it, reshaping it, refining it, learning how to scream like her. Her stomach twisted into a cold knot. If it could mimic her fear this perfectly, then soon it would mimic every piece of her. She pushed herself up, ignoring the sting of blood on her legs, and kept running. The forest shifted around her, becoming unfamiliar, as if the mountain itself was turning her in circles. No trail, no rope line, no markers. She felt as if she'd been dropped into a place that didn't exist on any map, a place that didn't want her to leave. A faint light flickered ahead. Hope surged, but it died just as quickly when she realized the glow was coming from two narrow beams. Flashlights. They were hers, the same model her team used. The same dull, warm hue. And they hovered at the exact height of her eyes, pointed directly at her. But no one held them. Her breath snagged. The beams tilted slightly, imitating the angle she always held her light when nervous. Then they blinked. Once, twice, the way she blinked when scared. The creature was no longer just trying to become her voice. It wanted her posture, her habits, her movements. It wanted her entirely. She turned and bolted, crashing through underbrush until she burst into a clearing. In the center stood a half-collapsed ranger tower, long abandoned, its wooden steps warped and splintered. It loomed like a skeletal refuge, but it was the only structure she had seen for hours. She scrambled up the stairs, ignoring their groaning protests, and slammed the hatch shut behind her. The interior smelled of dust, old rainwater, and something acidic, fear-soaked into wood. From the tower window, she watched the forest edge. At first, nothing moved. Then the flashlights reappeared between the trees, swinging gently as if swaying from invisible hands. Her own voice drifted upward on the wind, whispering her name in soft, coaxing tones. The tower felt suddenly too small, too fragile. She pressed her back against the wall, shaking as the creature circled outside like a wolf learning how to wear human skin. The voice shifted again, deeper now, closer to her real tone. Almost perfect. Please, help me. Her own cadence, her own quiver, her own breath hitch. It was copying the exact way she sounded when comforting lost hikers. Weaponizing her empathy against her. Tears stung her eyes, and she buried her face in her hands, trying to block out the voice, the darkness, the impossible knowing. But then the floor beneath her creaked. Not from age, not from wind, but from weight. Something was inside the tower with her. And when it inhaled, it breathed exactly like she did. The air inside the tower tightened, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Maya stayed perfectly still, her palms pressed against the rotting floorboards, heart pounding so violently she feared the creature would mistake it for a signal. She didn't dare lift her head. The breathing behind her, her own stolen breathing, was soft, almost tentative, like the thing was testing the rhythm, adjusting it, improving it. She felt the temperature drop, a cold so unnatural it settled deep in her bones. Something shifted its weight just a few feet away, a slow and deliberate step that made the wooden planks groan under its impossible shape. She forced herself to glance up, just enough to see the silhouette reflected in the window's shattered glass. Tall, wrong. Its shoulders were too sharp, its neck too long, its head tilted at an angle no living thing could hold. Yet it stood there in her outline, mimicking the way she usually positioned her body when frightened, hunched a little, arms drawn close, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Seeing herself reflected in something so grotesquely incorrect ignited a new level of terror, one she'd never known possible. The creature took another step, this one softer, more confident. It was getting better at moving like her. Maya's throat constricted. If she screamed, it would learn that too. If she ran, it would mimic her sprint. The only thing left she had, her only advantage, was unpredictability. So she did the hardest thing imaginable. She remained perfectly still, ignoring every scream echoing in her skull that begged her to flee. The creature tilted its head toward her, as if examining a puzzle piece it didn't fully understand. Then it spoke again, her exact voice, this time layered with an uncertainty that chilled the air. "Why? Are you scared?" It wasn't mocking her. It was genuinely asking, learning fear, studying emotion, trying to understand the purpose of trembling and tears. Her pulse hammered louder, and the creature took another step, drawn to it like prey to vibrations. The tower groaned, dust drifting from the ceiling. Maya calculated the distance to the ladder hatch. If she ran now, it would catch her. If she stayed, it would become her. The creature leaned closer, its breath brushing the back of her neck, warm, human, practiced. Her hand slid silently toward a broken floorboard nearby, fingers curling around the jagged wood. She kept her breathing slow, steady, controlled, her real breath, not the version it copied. With one fast, desperate movement, she slammed the board sideways against the lantern hanging near the wall. Glass shattered, and fire erupted instantly, licking the dry wood like it had been waiting decades for a spark. The creature recoiled violently, its shape glitching, flickering like a corrupted reflection caught between forms. The fire cast grotesque shadows across its limbs, revealing the truth of it: stretched muscle, bone that didn't belong to anything alive, a face that rearranged itself in frantic spasms, trying and failing to decide which version of her it should wear. Maya didn't wait. She hurled herself toward the hatch as flames surged up the walls. The tower shook under her weight as she slid down the ladder, landing hard on the ground below. Smoke billowed upward, and the tower crackled like a dying creature. But above the roar of the fire, she heard one last sound. Her own voice, furious now, distorted, echoing through the beams as the creature writhed inside. "I'm not finished learning you." Under the pale shimmer of the moon, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. The forest, once only unsettling, had grown into a living labyrinth of whispers and shifting silhouettes. Elena stepped forward first, her lantern trembling in her grasp, casting fractured light that danced against the crooked trees. Every step crunched softly on the damp ground, echoing like distant bones snapping beneath unseen weight. She didn't look back, but she could feel the others' fear pressing against her spine, pushing her toward a truth none of them were ready to face. The air thickened as they reached the abandoned shrine, its stone pillars cracked and wrapped in creeping vines that pulsed faintly like veins. A chilling hum drifted from within, low and resonant, vibrating through the earth and straight into their chests. It sounded like chanting, no, like the forest itself was speaking. Elena's breath caught. She had heard that sound once before, in the visions that haunted her sleep, the ones she never dared confess. Now they were awake, unfolding in front of her, demanding to be acknowledged. Lucas stepped beside her, jaw tense, flashlight flickering weakly in his hand. "We shouldn't be here," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. He wasn't warning her, he was trying to convince himself. The shrine's entrance yawned before them, a mouth carved in stone, promising answers that would come with a cost. Elena raised her lantern higher, and the shadows recoiled, as if recognizing her. Inside, the air grew colder, denser, carrying the metallic scent of old blood and forgotten prayers. Strange symbols were etched across the walls, glowing faintly as though lit from beneath the stone. And at the center of the shrine stood an altar, its surface cracked but unmistakably stained. Elena's pulse hammered as she stepped closer, Memories crashing into her mind, visions of a ritual interrupted, a scream swallowed by night, and hands reaching through the veil between worlds. Suddenly, the humming stopped. The silence was deafening, suffocating, pressing against their eardrums until Lucas winced and clutched his head. The lantern light flickered violently, stretching the shadows into long, distorted shapes that curled and twisted along the walls like living smoke. Alina's skin prickled as one of the shadows detached itself from the stone and slithered across the floor toward her, silent but full of intent. A blast of cold wind swept through the shrine, extinguishing the lantern. Darkness swallowed them whole. Panic erupted. Lucas calling her name, chairs scraping, boots stumbling on stone, but Elena remained still. Because in that darkness, she could see. Not with her eyes, but with the pulsing memory awakened deep within her. The shrine responded to her presence, the symbols flaring to life in a harsh, red glow that painted her face in blood-colored light. From the altar rose a figure, half-formed, carved from shadow and despair, its limbs stretching unnaturally as it lifted its head to face her. Its voice, when it spoke, was 1,000 whispers layered into one, echoing through the chamber like a dying breath. "You have returned," it said, hollow and knowing. The cycle begins again. Alina's fear surged, but beneath it was something deeper, something ancient. She took a step forward. Then let it end tonight.
Thank you. You